Hi, everybody. Welcome. And it's good to see you all. So we're all here to, in some way, honor the moon. And we happen to be right now in the phase of the dark moon, which is the phase that precedes the new moon. So when we think about honoring the dark moon, we can also think about and really open ourselves to honoring the presence of darkness in our lives. Darkness as soil, as sleep, as midnight, as underworld, as winter, as water, as death, as unknowing, and darkness as the place from which all life arises, as the mystery. So this is, we're doing big things tonight, honoring the presence of darkness and mystery and magic. And again, welcome. I'm going to share with you, we are cyclical creatures governed by primal rhythms. So we'll do a welcome. We'll do a little grounding with breath and opening to heaven and earth. And I don't know if you can hear it, but the ice cream man is driving by, which is very sweet. It's like this goodbye song to summer. I would love to do some introductions at some point so we can really also create a community and a cohesion together. And then I'll speak on lunar cycle, specifically balsamic. We are in the season of Libra, so we'll look a little bit about some of the themes that arise for us, whether it's conscious or unconscious in the season of Libra. And then a bow to the eclipse that is happening this Saturday. Probably don't need to go through my whole list for you for the sake of time, but this is, like I said, this is my intention. If we don't get through all of it, there will be more opportunities to gather and learn from one another. Let's go ahead and get grounded, comfortable, comfy-esque seat. We'll take some time to connect into our breath. So if you like, you can close your eyes. And just take a few very gentle breaths to welcome you, to release any of the busyness of the day. And then we can intentionally connect with whatever might be touching the earth or touching what is touching the earth. So if you're in a seat or on the sofa, feeling your sitting bones, maybe your feet are on the earth. Taking a moment to connect with our roots. And as you exhale, either sensing or visualizing your roots growing deep into the earth. And then we will come up and for a few moments, just really breathing into the center of your heart, center of your chest. That spark of fire within you. And then for the next few breaths, just being aware of the vastness, the vast sky, the heavens above you, above all of us. And breathing in that pristine air and energy from the heavens, breathing it in from through the crown. and then sending it back down through the body, through the legs, the feet, into the earth. And then on the next inhale, drawing from deep within the earth, energy up through your roots, through your legs, your hips, all the way up the spine. And then exhale, letting it go out. Just releasing anything you don't need out through the crown. So just a couple more breaths, opening ourselves as we ground more deeply. Beautiful. And then just release any visualization that you're doing. And before we come back and perhaps open our eyes, feel yourself again sitting, perhaps lying down, feel your body. And again, welcome to everybody. To honor your name, the date that you were born, and someone that you would like to call in this evening. And Martha, November 8th, 1969. And gosh, there's many beings I would love to call in, but the first that comes to me is Luna.
Everyone, I'm Pam Stein. My birthday is September 27th, 1968. Oh, and I'm calling in my old friend Cornelia Scott.
I'm just going to go down the list, and if you don't want to vocalize, you can just maybe type in pass.
I'm Carrie, and my birth date is 12/15/81, and I'd like to call in my dearly departed friend.
I am Catherine. I was born April 5th, 1969, and I will call in my dad.
A lot of fire signs, a lot of Sagittarius, a lot of Aries. We've got some Scorpios representing. And then Pam, you are Libra, right? Yeah. Goodness gracious. Okay, let's bring it. We are going to continue right along. Just a quick overview if you are new to honoring the moon in any way. You may already know, so this could be a reminder for many of us. But the moon takes about 27, a little more than 27 days to orbit the Earth. Yet the lunar cycle, which like a lunation, is about 29.5 days. So that's the amount of time from new moon to new moon. So essentially we can say, I think it's usually just collapsed into about 28 days for a lunar cycle. And within the lunar cycle, within that 28 days, there are 4 primary phases. And so we have the new moon, which is coming on Saturday. And then about 7 days after new moon, we have the first quarter moon. And then 7 days after first quarter moon, we have the full moon. So new moon, first quarter moon, that is waxing lunar energy. And then we get to full moon. And that is like when the waxing energy reaches its zenith, reaches its fullness, and we have the glorious full moon. Of course, a time of celebration, a time of gratitude. It could also be a time for practicing forgiveness, for making amends. And then as soon as we experience the full moon, the fullness, it begins to wane. And so that means the light is decreasing during the waning phase. And as the light is decreasing, 7 days after the full moon, we have third quarter moon. And then 7 days after that, we begin again with the new moon. As I write often, and as I say often, we are cyclical creatures. Like we are intrinsically tied to the cycles, the seasons of nature. And you're here because either you already have an affinity for the moon, for astrology, And, or you might also just beginning to like tap into that curiosity, tap into that remembering. Because I also really believe that we all know this. It's all in our DNA, right? Because our ancestors lived by the rhythms of sun, moon, sky, stars. Their lives depended upon how well they were watching and paying attention to the heavens. So we have these cycles going on, and the dark moon, which is my favorite phase, also known as the balsamic moon. And the word balsam, this is my favorite part. The word balsam means balm, right? So balsam is same derivation as the word balm. And the way I like to like play with that is really the dark moon is balm. It is medicine. And it is the most yin time of the lunar cycle. So the moon itself, and again, this might be by way of reminder, the moon itself is yin compared to the sun being yang. So the lunar cycle, of course, is yin in nature, but when we get to this time right now, it is the most yin time. So how do we apply that? How do we think about that? I think the first thing is to begin, if we don't already, to pay attention to our own cycles, to our own energy levels, and how they sync with the lunar cycle. So for those who do menstruate, it's also watching like, when do you ovulate? When do you bleed? What's happening hormonally in regards to the lunar cycle? And then that, of course, becomes information that you can then tailor your activity level to, your rest level, the foods you eat, the foods you avoid, getting more sleep, getting a little less sleep, more time meditating, more time opening and being open for intuition and messages. So this yin time right now where we are, generally speaking, it is a time of less physical energy. And then as our physical energy decreases, it is also a time where we might notice more spiritual energy or more intuitive capacity during this time. So it's a really beautiful time to rest, to dream, to wander, and to be, to wander in nature and to open ourselves to the signs and symbols of nature and how the natural world speaks to us. So that's a little bit about this particular, an overview, a review, and then a little bit about this particular phase. If you have questions at any time, please feel free to put them into the chat. And one is coming. Let's see what it says. During this dark moon time, where would the cycle line up ideally? Yeah, that's such a great question. I'd like to manipulate my cycle to match it if I can. Manipulate is a funny word, but I know, I do know what you're asking. So Carrie's asking a great question. Like, so it's difficult. It's very difficult to live, especially in a city where we have so much artificial light that influences us and influences our hormones. I would say ideally, one ovulates on the full moon and bleeds on the new moon. And when I say ideally, I really mean more historically. Like historically in ancient times, that was how, at least what research says or studies have shown. Now, though, living in more modern times, there doesn't seem to be as clear of a connection. And they do attribute that to the amount of artificial light that we have. And I would say all the various forms of stimulation that we didn't have in agrarian societies. So that's the best I can offer, Carrie, in this moment. Does that help at all? Okay, super. All right, so let's see what's next on our agenda. Okay, So this is something I've been thinking a lot about. And when we're going through a hard time, I'll say a dark time, and dark doesn't have to mean hard, but I do think it often has that connotation, because dark really, in some ways, also expresses like some sort of chrysalis, some type of underworld, some type of cathartic process. So I'm using it in that way when I say when we're going through a dark time. One of the hardest things to remember is that expansion always follows contraction, and that like spring always follows winter, and that no matter how scattered or chaotic we might feel, there will be a coalescing, there will be order. And I think that one of the most beautiful things that following and really paying attention to the lunar cycle can do for us, and I feel it helps me with, not to say that I don't still have those moments, of course I do, but I get back on track more quickly because I've learned, and I still learn, how to accept, how to honor each part of the cycle, right? It's really also the cycle of our lives, because we're talking about the moon, yes, but we're also talking about energy. So for instance, what I mean by that is this phase of the moon, the balsamic moon, dark moon, is like very energetically resonant with winter solstice. Again, a very yin time. And that means it's also very energetically resonant with the 24-hour cycle with midnight. So, like at midnight, we are to be asleep. We are to be resting. At winter solstice, we are really to be, again, consolidating our energy and resting and hibernating. All right, so let me just take a moment, and before I go into speaking about the new moon in Libra, it feels perhaps important, before I speak on the new moon in Libra, to speak a little bit about, just to contextualize where we've been. We all know where we've been in some ways in terms of seasonally, but the autumnal equinox arrived about 2.5 weeks ago, getting closer to 3, I guess. 23rd. No, yeah, it'll be 3 weeks on Saturday. So the autumnal equinox arrived on September 23rd, and that also brought in the energies of Libra, of balance, right? Equal night, equal day is what the equinox is symbolizing, is what actually happens. And then we have Libra coming in, the energies of Libra, which also has a lot to do with balance and harmony. Autumn, generally speaking, is, and if you've been with me, especially, I know there are at least a couple of you who were in my autumn class, the seasonal wellness class I taught on autumn, as well as the renewal course we just wrapped up on Tuesday. So this is a familiar thing for you, but the season of autumn, the power of autumn, is decline and death. So the energetic movement of autumn being a yin season, the energy is moving downwards. And the emotion that goes with that energetic movement is grief. So we're sitting in this time of year, right? Like we're moving towards the darkness. The energetic movement is down and inward. The natural world is so brilliant and beautiful, and the light is changing, and many things are alive. Like there's still so many plants that are alive, and yet in the Northern Hemisphere, it is a time of decrease, of consolidation of energy. So the theme of loss is present September, October, November. And when I mean that, by that, I mean energetically. So if you're feeling that, if you're experiencing that, grief, loss, sadness, it's very appropriate. It's actually very appropriate this time of year. and grief is a very tender emotion. And sometimes we know what we're grieving. You know, we've lost a beloved, or a relationship has ended, a friendship has ended. Kids have gone off to school, to college, or moved out. A little one is starting first grade. So there's all these ways in which we experience loss in our lives, aging, parents are aging. So the list goes on, of course. But I think it's important that before I begin to speak about Libra and the specificity of Libra, that we also know that we're in this season of autumn, the solar season of autumn. And those energetics are really, I don't want to say more powerful, but they're all coexisting and commingling. So back to our Libra. Libra is an air sign, and it is governed by Venus, the planet Venus. And so that brings all these currencies around love and beauty and aesthetics, and of course, harmony and balance, communication, thinking, passion. I've probably missed a few, but those are some of the themes. And we have to think about it again with that image of the scales, right? Like, how am I communicating in my relationships? It's like the question becomes like, do I need to be practicing listening more? Or perhaps am I the one who needs to practice speaking more? That's one example. Another example might be in terms of weighing, just coming back to individual, like our individual process of refinement, because that's also very much what autumn is about. And I feel like Libra is too. Like, how are we creating more harmony, more balance in our life through the process of letting go, through the process of getting rid of that which doesn't uphold our highest value, our highest virtue. So some of these things might be working on you already around communication, whether that's being assertive, being a better listener. We can just pause and ask ourselves, like, where is there disharmony in my relationships? And this, of course, can be primary. This can be friendships, any business. It's a great thing to reflect upon. And then also, how am I thinking, right? Because as an air sign, Libra is also calling us to, like, there's this way I want to use the word elevate, like elevate the way we are thinking, in order to bring more harmony into our bodies, into our minds, into our day-to-day living. Yes, so to switch back just for a moment to switching back to the season of autumn and the metal element. So in the 5-element tradition of Chinese medicine, metal is the element that is resonant with autumn. And metal, what that's actually meaning, what that's depicting, is like the gems that grow in our earth, the crystals, the rarefied beauty and brilliance that grows in the earth. And I feel like in different ways, that's what Libra is also talking about. Like, how are we becoming the next best version of ourselves? How are we becoming a little more refined? And best version of ourselves and refined, I feel like those words might have connotations that could bring self-judgment or self-criticism. And that is definitely not the point of it. It's more like what is in alignment with what my heart wants. So refinement, consolidation of energy, communication, thinking, all of those are places where Libra may already be working on you or will be working on you. And so they're good things. They're good things. We want to hold those in mind as we create our intentions for the new moon in Libra, which arrives on Saturday. 7:35. We're doing beautifully with time. Does anybody have any questions at this juncture before I go again? All right. And always feel free to put it in the chat. So the other thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know a lot, and I'm really open to anybody else who wants to share and enhance what I mentioned, but we have the eclipse coming, the eclipse coming on Saturday as well. And the eclipse, it'll be, I mean, I don't know even how much we'll be able to see of it. It's really along like Texas. It's like going to be very visible in the Four Corners area, like Colorado, Arizona. I forget the 2 other states, guys. My geography is not great, but in that area. And eclipse is also a new beginning. So we have this new moon beginning, heightened, amplified by the eclipse rebirth. And so it might be a real deep one. It might be a real doozy. And I guess each of us will have to sort of discern what doozy means for us or how we care for ourselves. But I would say that it's to trust your body, trust your needs for sleep, your need for rest, your need for making space, like really making space to feel, to process, so that it's a clean slate, a fresh slate, as the new moon energy comes in to take the seeds of your intention, of our intentions, and to allow them to root and grow and come to full flourishing at the full moon. I see a question. I get so excited. Can I ask a question about the magnetic pull of the moon? Oh yeah, let's hear it, Pam.
So I was reading something about just that, and the magnetic pull of the moon. So if it at a full moon, is there more of a magnetic pull of things on the earth? Or I, I'm not really sure what I'm even asking, other than I'm just curious about what the magnetic pull is and how it may affect us. Because I also was reading something, I don't remember the details, about a moon garden and how people would plant during certain times of the moon. Do you have information about that?
I have some information in like a small, tiny file up here, and I'm going to share it with you, but I'm sure the World Wide Webs will have so much information. And if anybody else has more information, but I do have a file on that, Pam, and I love the question so much. And so the way I'll answer that question is the moon, the pull of the moon acts on the water and the tides. So around the full moon, the tides, I'll say the swing of tides, like the high tide will be so much higher around the full moon, and as the low tide versus, like, let's say around the new moon. So when the moon is full, there is a greater magnetic pull on the waters. And you can look, it's very beautiful to look at moon, the tidal charts, I'll call them, like, and how the moon influences high tide, low tide, based on the phase of the moon. It's very cool to look at that. So I encourage you to do that. It's fun. And the way I think of it is that the moon, like, what are we? We're made up of like 80+% water, right? And our blood is made up of like 80+% water or something, very high amount of water. So we are a fluid filled being, and all life, whether it's plant, whether it's I couldn't even come up with an animal. Let's say it's a fox or a cat, a koala bear, is also fluid filled. So in some ways, this relates back to Carrie's question, because we can't talk about blood. We can't talk about the moon. And where I'm going is we're talking about how the moon acts on the tides. We see that, right? But we can't talk about how the moon affects us without talking about how it affects our blood, because our blood is such a high concentration of water. And then to also not have some relationship with our hormones. So, there's all these stories and lore around the full moon, and there's a higher incidence of things happening in, I don't even like the words, but what word could I use? Places where I guess people are having trouble, and they're having, or maybe they have certain diagnoses, that there's more occurrences of mania or hysteria or outbreaks of violence. Even I think people have tracked this in cities in recent times, what happens around crime rates around the full moon. And so yes, it absolutely has an effect on us. The place I was going to go very briefly was to just tie together that in Chinese medicine, we say that the blood is not only the red substrate, like it actually houses our consciousness and it holds our emotions. So if we kind of put all that together, if the moon is acting on the water and our blood is made up of a very high percentage of water, and if we allow ourselves to open to an ancient perspective that the blood houses our consciousness and it holds our emotions, right? What are emotions? They are energy, emotion. So our emotions also circulate through us. So to me, it seems very easy that it's also going to be acting on us, our emotions and our hormones, the full moon and the new moon, every phase. So light, as I said the other night in the renewal class, light, whether it's moonlight, whether it's sunlight, has a profound impact on our biochemistry. So I hope that made some sense, guys. I hope you were able to follow along. And in terms of moon gardens, I've heard different things, Pam. I don't have a whole lot of experience, because there are certain, I believe it goes something like this. There's some distinctions around if you're planting a seed versus if you are planting like a seedling, around when to plant it. And if anybody else has ever done this, please chime in. But it's a beautiful thing, a beautiful way to connect more deeply with nature, with the moon, with Earth, and the living beings. So anybody else know much about that, or anything that they want to chime? Okay, well, we'll all do some investigating. I think underneath the question and underneath of like moon gardening is really fundamentally like this reminder that when we design our lives a certain way, when we pay attention, right, to the cycles and the seasons, there is more harmony in our garden, more harmony in our lives, etc. That's what comes to me. So again, this is all a recap. If anybody wants to look at this, I'm not going to go too much into the metal element, but that is from the Chinese perspective. That is the season that we're in. The corresponding element is metal, relates to our lungs, large intestine. The one thing I think that is important, which I feel called to talk about, is that the climate of this time of year is dryness. And so it's really important, because both the lungs and the large intestine need sorry to say the word, a moist environment. Like the lungs are almost like they want to be like a rainforest. So when the lungs are dry, it can create a lot of disharmony. So there, and I can share this if anyone's interested, but there's ways that we can eat to really care for the environment of our lungs, large intestine, and to keep things moist, to keep things moving, and to protect the membranes in our lungs, which are such a big part of our immunity. Okay. Let me just do a time check. Okay, we're doing beautifully, everyone. I think my question is, do we understand what I'm saying? What I mean by that is that I think we all know this, right, in our own ways, that living is complex, and oftentimes we don't really understand why we're going through or experiencing something, and it can often be very directly linked back to either astrological season, solar season, both. So since we are at the new moon, I would love to take time to set some intentions. So new moon, the energy begins to grow. It's the waxing phase. So this is like when we set our intentions, it's as if our intentions become energetic seeds that we are like planting into the soil of the universe. Just a little guide on how we can create a powerful intention for the new moon. Everything is energy. Our words, our thoughts carry vibration. And being in this air sign, this season of Libra, so much is about how are we crafting our words? How are we communicating? How are we thinking even? And the universe is always listening to us. Take about 5 minutes and use it as a time to reflect on what you are ready to release. So what you're ready to shed or to release. And then the second part of that is what you are calling in. And so this is an example. You can look at that. It's very powerful to make an I am statement. Are we saying just or kind of? Finding a way to make it powerful and clear, like really refine. Be bold in your declaration, both of what you're letting go and also what you are calling in. And then we'll come back and we'll split into 2 groups, and we'll once again reintroduce ourselves, share into our bigger room. Like I really feel like there's a way that we could put what all of you have said into like the scales, right? Like how much of my energy do I want to be putting into this relationship or this name? Like, is it really worth it? Right? It's like and that's a part of that refinement, which is what I was talking about, right? Because it's like refinement for the sake of your essence, for your precious chi, for your preciousness, like back to like now and even the season and the medicine of the season, it's like paring down, drawing our energy inward. So more than ever, we're being called to set these boundaries, because that's the other word that I feel like is, and that's hard. And that's that piece about fog. It's like, you need to set the boundary for yourself, or I do. I'll just quickly say that
Martha, what is fog again? Fear of, you're on mute.
it's fear, obligation, or guilt. Don't do anything out of fog, or don't do anything when you're in a fog.
Your obligation, guilt.
Mm-hmm. And then, like, that's life's work. Like that's big. That's very big. Some themes in our group, like choosing or being aware that there are certain, I don't know, friendships, relationships that I'm going to use this word, like feel a little out of balance. And also like some of the people in our room were saying,
saying that we want to release like attachment to relationships with people who are, maybe not aligned with like our highest good or our path or supporting us in an equal way, and to call on people who are, willing to like cultivate relationships and put in the effort, show up.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. And Pam, were there any themes in your room or anything you want to report back to our groupie?
I think, tell me, is releasing anxiety, the unknown, um, and welcoming peace and ease and the mystery of life.
Mhm. I'm just
Yes.
letting that wash in. It's
Mhm.
welcoming the mystery of life. Oh my, yes,
Mhm. Woo.
exactly.
Mhm.
Thank you all so much. I'm always struck by so much vulnerability and courage and beauty and just the willingness to jump in, and share from the heart and be real. Um, so what I would recommend, if you don't already do this, is to keep, write down your intention, maybe put it on your altar or a space where you'll see it. And as best you can, put it in an I am, like I am letting go, I am releasing, and then I am, um, so on and so forth. What came up, what I wanted to say again is, like part of what was I heard being said in our group was around setting boundaries for the sake of like really protecting one's own energy, conserving one's own energy, and nurturing one's own energy in this season where we really are being asked to pull our energy inwards and be particular about how we spend it. So new moon comes on Saturday. We have an eclipse. Hold on to your horses. So what I'd like to do before we close is just make a couple of announcements. This Sunday, October 15th, there is a wonderful event happening in our Baltimore City. It is called Bazaar Esoterica, and Carrie and Isabel will be there. Do you guys want to say anything, like a little pop on? Are the hours 11 to 3? Isabel's going to do a pop on.
11 to 5.
Okay, I'm going to put it, it's called, and it's at the Peel Gallery, right?
The Peel Museum, it's down on Holiday Street by like the farmers market and like City Hall.
Okay, Peel Museum. And these lovelies will both have booths there, 11 to 5 p.m. So we want to go and support them and say hi. Yes? Somebody's
Oh, I just said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. The other announcement that I have is that I am restarting Moon School. And so Moon School is something I did a few years ago. And then anyways, it's restarting. And what that will mean, there'll be a winter session and we will meet on 3 Sundays to kind of go into new moon in Scorpio, new moon in Sagittarius, and new moon in Capricorn. So it's a way of very consciously traveling through the dark months together. And Pam will be with me, my amazing Pam, who, Pam, you're so many things, but Pam is a social worker, a nature-informed mindful therapist, and also, Pam, you are one of the, if not the most generous-hearted person I know, and incredibly, incredibly grounded and incredibly creative. So Pam will be by my side for the class 3 Sundays, 12 to 2. And each time we'll meet the dates, I'll put the dates in and I will have the Moon School. I'll be opening enrollment on Monday, Moon School, and the dates are 11 So it starts in November, 11/12, I believe, 12/11. That's fun, isn't it? Oh no, 12/10. 12/10 and 1/7. 12 to 2 p.m. And we'll just do that. And so keep your eyes out for that. It's going to be very sweet. It will be virtual. We'll be doing ritual. You'll have homework month to month, themes to think about, some journal prompts. So it'll be a really lovely, special offering. So we can be in community and travel through winter together. And I think those are all of my announcements. Pam, do you have any announcements? You might. Let's come back and bring our feet to the ground. Take a few breaths in and out. And for a moment, if we could all very intentionally send out love and healing to our world, to all of the places in our city, in the United States, and all across the world where there is so much suffering and harm. So let's just take a few breaths, sending out peace and ease and comfort. And then we can place one hand on the heart, the other hand on top. And as you breathe in, offer yourself peace. And offer yourself ease.